Hey everyone, I have a very exciting show for you today. It's exciting for many reasons. First and foremost, we are interviewing a subscriber of this channel, which is always a pleasure for me. We're interviewing someone who has a motivation to help you with financial education, financial independence, and most interestingly, I think this is the second doctor we've had on the show. So let's welcome Dr. Meadows, or Kenyon Meadows, to the show. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. This is going to be fun. Why don't we start with the normal? Who is Kenyon? What do you do? Where you are in the country? And we'll start there.
Yeah, I'm a physician. I'm a radiation oncologist, so I treat cancer patients exclusively, and that's the day job. And I'm now recently embarking on starting off a new YouTube channel and online presence called the Invest Doc. And the goal is to, yeah, help folks learn about various aspects of investing, and real estate certainly being one of them. And I'm a bit of a YouTube junkie, and most of the content I consume are people like yourself who are doing financial advice. And so I really appreciate it when I reached out to you to see if I could be on, and graciously accepted.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always fun talking with folks that have different experience levels and motivations. Why don't we first kind of educate folks? When did you start thinking about real estate? Right, obviously, probably to the layman, right? A cancer doctor is like, high income, got it wired, you're all set. I mean, why do anything else?
Well, yeah, so when I got out of training in back in '06 and first started to really invest in the stock market in any kind of serious way, um, you know, living through the '08 crash and
Mhm.
and afterwards, that initially sparked my interest to say, like, well, we know the market every once in a while is going to do stuff like this. And so I began to think, what are some of the alternative ways that I could invest money? And I began to take on a little bit different thought process in terms of what an asset is. I began to read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and thinking about things in terms of what produces some income. And so that got me down the real estate path. And in 2013 I got serious in terms of really trying to network with folks and meeting some mentors, and really starting to diversify a decent chunk of my disposable income in that way. So that's the beginnings of it.
Very cool. So one thing I know I want to talk about, because you see life up close and personal, right? Being a
Absolutely.
cancer doctor has to be emotionally draining sometimes, because not everybody
At times.
survives. Yeah, not every
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, did that give you a kick in the pants? Like, you're probably in your mid 30s or whatever when you're looking at this, or late 20s, and you're like, wow, some people I've seen are in their 30s or 40s, others are in their 80s. I mean, does that give you an awakening that, life is short or brief? Or I mean, how does that affect you?
Well, it does, right? And it's interesting, the older you get, anybody younger than you is young,
Right.
and so, and, when I first got into medical school and everything, and seeing somebody, say, for instance, in their 40s pass away, right? And now I'm in my 40s, right? And seeing somebody pass, that's a very sobering thing. It's
Right.
always the folks that are your age or younger in particular, you know what I mean, that affects you.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing that has changed my perspective on, it has made me lean towards, in terms of in a financial sense, the notion of having like a big pile of money when I'm older, and like that's sort of the main goal of like retirement and that kind of thing. It has shifted my focus to try to be more on the income replacement thing, financial freedom, try to make work more work optional, maybe earlier in my life. So it has affected that my outlook in that regard. Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. And also it's probably impacting you for your drive to help people, right? Not only are you helping people
Absolutely.
try to survive this,
Yeah.
this nasty, horrible disease, but you also see the ability to help people financially, which is just goes to
Well,
your character. That's
Well,
awesome.
Well, right, this whole internet thing, and I've written a self-published book on investing, and every, these are endeavors that, quite honestly, it's like, well, you certainly got a full enough life already. You don't need to do this other stuff, but I enjoy it, and it's, I don't want to go to the grave, regretting, and how much this takes off or how many people I impact, I don't know, but somebody's going to be impacted by it,
Right.
and it's kind of nice to be in a situation where, I don't like need the money from the book or anything like that. It really takes on a level of kind of service. And it's been very rewarding. It really has been.
Very, very cool. I admire you for doing that. I can only imagine just the emotional and stress that you have during the 9 to 5. I'm sure it's longer than that, but let's just call that the day job.
Mhm.
And then to come back and give back in a meaningful way is pretty spectacular. So I thank you for all you're doing, Kenyon. That's pretty amazing.
Well, and I appreciate guys like you too, that have achieved a level of financial independence with real estate, and you certainly could just stay behind the scenes and just enjoy life. And here you are, making videos and trying to reach out and stuff like that too. So that's very cool.
Yeah, I got to do something, man. I was 45 when I exited, so I don't know what the heck I would do with myself if I didn't do this. So let's go back to 2013. You indicated that was a pivotal moment. You quote unquote got serious. My notes say here.
Yeah.
What did that mean?
Well, what that meant was starting to ask people in my immediate network, hey, what do you do? What do you invest in besides the stock market? That was really my question to a lot of people. Okay. And honestly, the first person that gave me some really meaningful feedback was a pastor I had met, and he mentioned he didn't take a salary from his small church, and he's like, I'm financially independent. I was like, well, how's that work? And he mentioned that not only did he own some rentals, but he did a lot of private real estate lending, and I had no idea what that was at that
Ah,
time. And he connected me with a gentleman that he had invested with, and that sort of started the ball rolling. So my first real foray into real estate investing was actually on the paper side of things. um, I was still pretty petrified, I guess, initially to take on or the thought of owning rental property. I was believing the typical hype about, well, all the tenants trash toilets and all the time consumption and everything. So I was actually pretty reluctant to own rentals. So I started off private lending for fix and flips. And at the time, I was like, man, this is great. You can make certainly double digits to the teens in terms of your returns on your money. It's secured by a property, and that's great. And did that for really the first year. And then you start to get a little more sophisticated, like, well, this is ordinary income, and you got to constantly, find a new project, and the partners I work with, whether they always had a deal so that you could turn your money back around. That was, not always the case. And so I basically began to get a little more warmed up to the idea of doing the rental thing. And it was actually one of the people that I was loaning money to that was like, hey, you're making a return, that's great, but you're not really building any wealth, really. You don't have
right.
any equity, you don't have any ownership in anything. So let's, when you get serious, I'll help you with this part of things too. And so that's and got the first rental in 2014.
Very, very cool. Well, let's
Hmm.
talk about that first private lending, right? So you were in a situation, again, you're a cancer doctor, so your income's up there, your ability, you don't seem flashy, so your ability to save is better than most. So
Hmm.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Um, do
Well,
you remember the first
student
year?
loan debt helped me not be flashy for a few years. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that.
Oh, amen to
Yeah,
that.
I went the expensive route, man. So I had, definitely some money to pay off, and that helped be disciplined.
There you go. Got to make that payment every month. They
Hmm.
want their money back. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. I always like to talk about the first deal. So you get introduction via someone you know and trust, your pastor, to someone who they know and trust. Do you
Hmm.
remember the first deal? How long it took, start to finish? What was it like? Do you remember?
Yeah. Yes, it was in Jacksonville, Florida, and it was a property that I think they wound up acquiring for about 125,000 bucks, and after renovations and all that, the projected resale on it was going to be about 260 or so.
Mm, okay.
And the person that I was with, he had a nice operation going to the point where he had a number of investors, and if you wanted to take down the whole loan, great. But if you wanted to just kind of get your feet wet and take part of it, he was cool with that too. So
Mm.
I think my initial participation was maybe like 25 or 30,000 into that, right?
Oh, okay.
I think it paid like 12% or no 14% interest,
Oh,
right? So I was getting that as a monthly interest check
yeah.
while the renovations and all that stuff was going on, and I thought that was great. I mean, I'm like, man, 14%. That's a lot better than I would be doing with this money, certainly in a savings account or whatever. And while you certainly can earn and do better than that in the stock market, we know the stock market can tank. Whereas, I was part of the first lien position on that house. And so I had some security.
Yeah.
And then, and I think it took about 8 months or so for that house to sell and then get my original capital back. And then, I started to participate in bigger amounts, but that was that first deal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Some is
Mm-hmm.
good, more is better, right? 14%.
Yeah.
That doesn't suck. That's pretty
That
good.
doesn't suck. No, it doesn't. Mm-mm.
All right. So now you step up, you get used to that. You're like, oh no, I just have more income, right? That's
Yep.
don't need that.
And the key is, no tax advantage on that income. That's the big thing, right?
Exactly where we were going.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, great. You're in the 50% tax bracket or whatever it is. And congrats,
Right.
you got more.
Yep.
Whoops. Didn't need that. So then you go, okay,
Right.
you go to the rental route. Do you remember the first rental you acquired?
Absolutely. Because I was kind of going in there gingerly, in terms of getting my feet wet. So a lot of due diligence, a lot of like, oh, do I really want to take the plunge and all that? So yes. So I tend to buy what's called workforce housing, the
Okay.
kind of modestly priced single family homes that really cater to folks that have that median household income in this country,
Yeah.
$50,000, $60,000, right? So my first rental property, the cost on it was $75,000, and it rented right at $1,000, and that was back in 2014.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was that first one. It was 3.2, 1,200 square feet, working class neighborhood. That's my bread and butter.
Now, what state, what city was this in?
Jacksonville, Florida, which is about an hour from where I'm at.
Okay, so Jacksonville,
Yeah.
Florida, 75K, $1,000 rent. That's awesome, right? Bigger pockets would love that, right? The 1% rule.
Oh, 1% rule, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did you get a loan? Did you go to the bank and use your credit and all that?
Actually, that first one, I actually did a little private money thing myself. I actually had some friends and family kind of deal coming with me, and paid them a little bit and bought it cash per se, but with my own little private lending network. 'Cause I didn't have quite the cash to take that down all at once. So yeah,
that's fun.
so not a bank loan though. Yeah.
No, I got you. So tell us where you are now. So that was your first deal. I think my notes say 2014.
Yep.
Where are you sitting today?
Sitting today at 11 rentals right now. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So just slowly, buying, when opportunities come through my network, right price, that kind of deal. Mm-hmm.
So 11 rentals, all houses?
Yes, all single families. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all single family. All in Jacksonville or thereabouts?
Yes, in essence, yep.
Do you manage them yourself or pay someone?
Oh, I pay someone. Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely.
You've just replaced Jacksonville with Fresno, and you've just summarized my first 5 years.
Okay, there you go. Right.
One rental at a time. Take them down when they come across. I have a crazy full-time job. I pay someone else. I paid someone to manage it since we had that first house on Norris Drive. So
yes,
I get it.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And I think it's important to, right, if you're gonna do the rental thing, to, I think, commit to getting a portfolio so that it makes sense to have that property management cost. It's not so much of a bite if you have like multiple, right? You know what I mean? And plus, quite honestly, it's just also safer from a vacancy standpoint too. To have multiple if you're going to do it.
Well, the other thing I'll tell you is you de-risk the situation, right? It's kind of a Warren Buffett quote, right? If you put everything in one basket and watch the freaking basket. I get really nervous when I see people on Bigger Pockets or YouTube or Facebook say, hey, I got something in Cleveland, in Huntsville, in Dallas, in San Diego. I'm just naming cities now.
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're guaranteeing somebody's ripping you off. I mean, that's all you're doing. I mean, you can't possibly watch them all equally,
Uh-huh.
and they're not going to all be the same, right? So
Hmm.
I'm a huge pick a city, invest. You don't have to live there, right? I'm not saying
Hmm.
live there, right? I'm
Right.
2.5 hours away, but you've
Yeah.
got to build a team and manage the team because I had to fire the first 5.
Absolutely. Yeah,
It's hard.
sure.
Yeah.
And again, the reason why I'm so relatively geographically concentrated and everything, that just happens to be where my network, who I began to trust and everything, they know those neighborhoods. They know the wholesalers. They really kind of keep up on what's going on with the prices. So that's why I'm comfortable doing that,
Yeah.
and why. And I did explore, some other like turnkey companies. Cleveland, I went to Indianapolis. I kind of wrapped these into trips that I was taking anyway, but I actually
Yeah.
met some turnkey providers on the ground in some of those other states. And I talked to some investors, including some folks from California that
Yeah.
owned a number of homes in these other cities. And, their experiences were kind of variable, and I just figured, well, I think I just got a little bit more control if I'm an hour away and I'm kind of
Exactly.
connected with the people who are there. So that's why I decided to keep it
Yeah.
regional. Yeah.
I see one of the big things in my life that got me to this point is I focus on controlling the downside. If I can
Hmm.
focus on controlling the downside, I say the upside takes care of itself.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge believer in telling people from California or New York or wherever that, these Excel spreadsheets that tell you that Indianapolis and Cleveland and Akron and Detroit all look great. Man, wait till the economy turns because you're going to get freaking crushed.
Well, one thing too that I don't know. Are you hip to this one organization, the Real Wealth Network?
I
Uh,
I know of it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, one thing I like about Kathy Fetke, who runs that,
Hmm?
she always talks about the underlying like demographics and economies of these various cities. And I'll just tell you, as a very blanket general statement, um, I've soured on the notion of investing in some of these Midwestern places. And I'm from Ohio, by the way, so I love but that where the population is dwindling. I mean,
Shrinking. Yeah.
because ultimately that's the tailwind to being able to have rent increases, property increases, and just having a pool to rent to. So it just makes me a little leery. I mean, I know they may cash flow well or whatever, but I just think about the exits. Whereas in
Yes.
Florida, right, there's 1,500 people move to Florida every day actually.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
all need somewhere to live.
Abs-
So
ab-
that's
abs-
that's a big thing for me.
Absolutely. And yeah, Kathy Fetke was a guest on this channel 3 weeks ago, I think. So
Oh,
yes.
wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's amazing. That whole
Yes.
team's pretty amazing. So
Hmm.
let's kind of wrap it together. So you did your first rental at 14. You got 11 now. What is Kenyon learned in, let's call it, 6 years? What how have you evolved?
Well, I would say obviously property management matters. Certainly had to change only once though, which I think is pretty good. I
Yeah,
know
not
people
bad.
had to change multiple times.
Yeah.
Um, having adequate reserves is
Yeah.
huge. I've dealt with the sequela of one of the big storms coming through, the hurricanes in Jacksonville,
Ah.
and that was actually the one stretch for about a month or two where I actually had to feed my rental portfolio because that many folks got affected, and temporary job situations, relocations, that kind of deal, and now that I've gotten bank debt on most of the portfolio, you know that having some reserves when everybody has an issue like that's big. um, so that's I would say that's the biggest thing. Do not go into rental property kind of just skimping by,
Yeah.
because there will be issues like that. I would say renovate the properties very well up front so that you don't have a lot of big capex otherwise. If you're if it needs a roof, if it needs the plumbing, all that kind of stuff. My mentor in this, she was very big on, hey, let's handle this stuff up front, and so you don't have to have a big outlay for a few years, which will
Mhm.
greatly help your performance. So yeah, that'd be that'd be one of the main things. And tenant screening.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
don't compromise on that either.
Sounded like an experienced landlord here, my friend. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, where are you taking this portfolio? Are you just happy with the onesie twosie a year? Do you have bigger dreams going forward? What's Kenyon in 10 years or 5 years?
Yeah, begun to explore some options on like the small multifamily situation. I do think I'd like to do like a fourplex if the right situation came around. So exploring that, but yeah, I'm content though that as deals that make sense in the single family side come through to still continue to build things that way. My mentor in this, by the way, is actually a physician ex-nurse couple, and the nurse is the one that's turned into like full-time real estate entrepreneur. They have 40 some rentals in Jacksonville,
Nice.
and they're getting ready to retire off of that. And they got most of them paid off. They've been investing since I think 2004 or something like that. So I look at her example and I'm like, hey, I'd be content to get there too. So if that's the route I go, great. But I am starting to see some of the value in potentially getting a fourplex. The thing you got to know about fourplexes and these small multifamilies, as you probably know, sometimes they're not like in the best neighborhoods, and sometimes there's a lot of heterogeneity amongst the ones even in the cluster. They're not all owned by the same person, and that kind of thing. That's kind of been the shaky part thus far with the fourplex thing.
Yeah, one of the things I like to say is bigger isn't always better. Um,
Hmm.
there was a long time where multifamilies were the better investment when you just do the math. But
Hmm.
thanks to Grant Cardone, at least that's who I
Yeah.
get it for. Bigger isn't better today. Just do the math. A single family
Hmm.
home is a better investment today, in my opinion. So it's pretty cool.
Well, they certainly, from what I've been able to gather, people for certainly stay longer in single
Oh,
family homes, and a lot of people that are in apartments, and I know Grant Cardone well too, and he that's his thing.
mm,
I mean, a lot of people in apartments, I mean, they're looking to trade out at some point, and just get their own walls.
yeah.
I like not having to do any of the lawn care or apply and
Utilities.
utilities and all that stuff. That's that. So I go long stretches, where not a lot's going on in my portfolio. I have um I have this threshold amount. I think it's $200 that my property manager is like, hey, if there's a repair or something minor that's below that, we're just going to go ahead and deal with it, and you'll see it on your statement. We're not going to call you about every little thing. And so when I tell some of my colleagues who are not into real estate, and other people I meet, yeah, they're kind of amazed that you can own a number of properties and it not be so intensive
Yeah.
management wise, but it's possible.
Yeah,
you know
tenants, toilets, trash, termites, whatever you want to call it, the nasty T's really isn't that bad if you're investing in quality neighborhoods, you're upgrading first, just like your mentor said. It's pretty awesome. So
yeah,
let's talk about InvestDoc. This is a particular
yeah.
passion of yours. What is it? How do people follow it? What can people find on it? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it's my new online presence. I I started doing the online thing back in 2017, but that was mostly just to promote my book, Alternative Financial Medicine, and that book basically chronicled all the different assets that I was into at the time, which also included some things like real estate crowdfunding, which I do a little bit of, but I was kind of into that pretty heavy back then, and then some other things as well. So did a lot with that for a year, then kind of dropped off a little bit, and now the InvestDoc represents this new and sustained effort to have an online presence. So if you go to youtube.com/investdoc, that you can get it there. I have an ebook that is investdoc.com/ebook, where I basically detail for folks what I look for in buying a single family home. It's called Buy Your First Rental, and free of commercial bias. It's just talking about just objective criteria that I look for, the 1% rule, the type of neighborhoods I do, what the renovations that I would recommend that you kind of get in place if you're doing a renovation on the place, that kind of thing. So, and also that that book in essence is a little series of videos on the InvestDoc channel as well. So, hoping people to join the email list. I want to get interactive with folks. Ideally, most of my content will be answering people's questions, or interviewing other folks that wind up getting into the circle. That's what I like to see things take off.
Very, very cool.
Now, I should also mention, this has been a very real estate heavy talk. Um, I'm into really anything that produces cash flow.
Okay.
So we'll talk about private lending, how I do that. And I also do some things. I certainly buy some dividend producing stocks as well. And I also do some conservative, and I emphasize the word conservative, options trading strategies that also generate income too.
Wow.
So those are all the different focuses on the channel.
That's awesome. I like how it's diverse, and I really like it how it's you, right? I think that's the key to any successful YouTube channel, is just share what you're doing, learning, and invite people to ask questions. I think that's a tremendous idea, and thank you for that. That's
Absolutely.
Gonna
Absolutely.
Be fun. So let's merge InvestDoc with your day job. Again, going back to that, I just think there's a natural tie-in where a message of, you just don't know, right? Life can take a turn. You just don't know, right? Wake up with a lump
absolutely.
somewhere.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And the other thing too, that I view this also as sort of like a legacy project too for my two daughters. They're 11 and 12, and I've been talking a little money and finance and that kind of stuff with them for a while now, and I want to show like another level of like seriousness and also leave something behind that hopefully down the road they'll be more into it than they are right now, and see like, hey, Dad was really serious about this stuff, and I see the importance of it now. I think it's kind of tough sometimes at this age to get kids to see like the real importance of it. But as you know, man, financial education and whatnot is not something that's in the school system for darn sure.
Yeah, it's the fact that they learn about biology and chemistry and trigonometry and all that other stuff, and they don't learn how to balance a simple checkbook, and that credit cards are bad, is not okay.
It's not. It's not. So that's another big push of this thing too, as a legacy project as well. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, Kenyon, this has been so much fun for me. Why don't you tell the audience one more time how they can follow you?
Yeah, YouTube/investdoc.com. You can just go to investdoc.com as well. There's a blog there with some blog posts as well, and there'll be a link to the ebook. And maybe, I don't know if you do show notes, so I can certainly send you some links to post down below the show here on YouTube.
I do. Send me the notes. They will get them. This video will actually be up later this afternoon. So
okay.
I don't mess around. I don't edit my videos. I hit save and then publish or upload or whatever the link is. So
well, I got to take some lessons from you, man, because I'm slow in getting mine out, because I'm still messing around with some editing stuff, and I got to transition to just going raw with it.
Yeah, just go raw, man. It's don't worry about perfection. Massive Action goes, and this will be up in a couple hours. So Kenyon, I appreciate you. You have a wonderful day.
All right.
Thanks.
Talk to you.